Alright folks, so today I'm looking at the big fish. Here it is, the heavy support section of the new Eldar codex. Now these again are just my first impressions. This is just what I've, my first kind of thoughts on what I've read so far. Now, just like the old Eldar codex, the heavy support section is packed to the brim with stuff that you want to take in your army. It's one of the quote-unquote problems, if you want to say, of the Eldar codex of many generations now, and that is that the heavy support options are so good that and you can't take them all. You can only take 3 total. And that I'm happy to report that's still the same situation. It is a happy thing because it means that there's tons of good stuff in the heavy support section, and you can really build a variety of armies around what your choices are going to be in this heavy support section. Let's get right into it. Let's go right to the first unit. There's been some controversy about this unit. A lot of people saying that it still sucks and they're never going to use it and this kind of stuff. Well, I gotta say, I'm really happy to report that the Dark Reapers are actually a lot better than they used to be. The old Dark Reapers had the problem of being far too expensive, far too many points, and not very survivable, and only being really good at killing Marines. And pretty much the only reason you ever took the old unit was to buy the overpriced, tricked-out Exarch, who could take, multiple shots, ignoring cover potentially, had really good ballistic skill, and really you were just buying it for that guy, to be able to blow things out of the sky with that one model that cost almost 90 points in your unit. Well, the unit themselves has gotten a lot better. The first thing is, they still kill Marines really well with their anti-Marine missiles. We got the Strength 5 AP3 shots there at a really good range. But for an investment of 8 points each, you can suddenly give these guys the equivalent of crack missiles that have pinning. Those are the old Eldar missile launcher style crack missiles. And that's pretty amazing to give a whole unit of guys that, considering that these guys now have slow and purposeful. What a great ability to give these guys. It means that I think the best way of actually fielding these guys now is to start them inside a Wave Serpent. The Wave Serpent will protect them from the biggest problem, which is that first turn, the unit gets wiped out because your opponent's like, those guys gotta die. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. He's going to have to take down that Wave Serpent. And because it's slow and purposeful, you're going to be able to pop out of it and fire your guns, your insanely powerful guns, having been protected the previous turn. So I think that's going to be one way to play these guys, to pop them out of a Wave Serpent. Now, with the Starshot missiles, with the upgrade to the better missiles, which I actually honestly think you would really need it for these guys, their purpose as anti-marine killing, it's not useless, but it certainly has been taken over by the Fire Prism, which does it just as well for much cheaper than a unit of these guys. It doesn't mean you're never going to fire the anti-marine missiles, but you really want to take those big missiles with these guys. Now, another great bonus these guys have gotten is the Reaper Rangefinder. Reaper Rangefinder means you ignore all Jink cover saves on anything you shoot at. That includes flyers. So while these guys, unfortunately, for some reason, the unit cannot take flak missiles, which would have given them instantly a role that was super necessary in your army, only the Exarch can take flak missiles, which kind of sucks. Despite that, if you have some rerolls happening, it might be worth firing the Strength 8 missiles at flyers because you're going to ignore their Jink cover saves. That's a really nice benefit to have. So that's a big deal over there. Now, in terms of survivability, there's still the same Eldar toughness. They still have, the solid, but not exactly going to protect you from everything armor. So they are going to go down. You've got to really use them sparingly and fire at targets that you're really gonna beat up. The Exarch is still a decent upgrade, but no longer as necessary as before. And unless you really want to take him for his flak missiles, which I don't totally recommend. If you're going to do that, make sure you take the fast shot so that you can fire 2 of those flak missiles at least. But an interesting unit. They got a lot better because they're a little bit cheaper. They can actually take the better missiles, which is really crucial, even though that makes them more expensive than the old ones. And slow and purposeful means you can hide them inside a vehicle until you need to use them. I kind of like that. I don't know how much I'm going to be using these guys, but I like them a lot more than they used to be in the old codex. Let's talk about support weapons. I don't actually have any. There's no photos of them in the book, unfortunately. Can you imagine that? So I've got my website here, but they are also very compelling. I know I keep throwing that word around all the time, but they are very, very interesting. So the fact that you get 3 of these weapons for so cheap, like it's one of your cheapest squadron type things that you can ever fill out. Of course, they're not vehicles, but just giving you an idea. that it's really worth taking if you just need some heavy punch in your army and you don't have a lot of points. The Shadow Weaver, great little blast weapon, has an awesome range. Barrage weapon, you don't even need line of sight. A unit of 3 of them, small blasts, strength 6, strength 7 against vehicles or low initiative things, with the monofilament rule, sort of like a pseudo rending. I mean, that's a great weapon for 30 points. That is a lot of firepower for 30 points. And the artillery units in 6th edition are far more resilient than they used to be. They used to be really easy to kill. Now they're much harder to take out. Vibro Cannon, pretty interesting. A little bit unclear on the wording, but it seems to be if you get 2 hits with it, each of the hits is going to be Strength 8 AP3, and if you get 3 hits, then each of the hits is going to be Strength 9 AP2. From what I can understand of the wording, the way you hit. So if you guide these guys or twin link them in some sort of way with like prescience or whatever, then you can get like 3 really good hits or 2 or 3 really good hits out of a relatively cheap unit with the Vibro Cannon. Unfortunately, the line is gone, but that created more problems than anything else, so I can see why it's gone. The D cannon, what a deadly gun. Imagine taking the gun that is carried by a Wraith Guard, making it a blast, and doubling the range. I mean, for 55 points, that is really, really good, and you can take up to 3 of them in the unit. Now, the range is still not far enough to hit things on the edge of the board, so you might need to move a turn. But for most of the game, especially if you're playing objectives, things will be in range to fire at. So really good choices. I'm going to definitely have to paint up some of these support squads to try them out eventually. Let's continue on. Everyone's favorites, and my favorite for a long time, Warwalkers. These guys have got more expensive, but they gained better ballistic skill, which makes all the difference. They gained the ability to run before or after they shoot. I mean, that's just deadly. And they also gained a 5+ invulnerable save all the time, even though they did become open-topped. A lot of benefits to these guys. You're going to see tons of them on the battlefield. If you didn't see them in 5th edition already, then you're going to see even more of them now. Very good unit. The fact that the gun upgrades are so much cheaper all around means you're going to see a wide variety of these guys used, too. Can't wait to see what kind of cool combos people come up with for that. Not much more to say since they're so awesome. Grav tanks. Let's talk about the Fire Prism. Much to my chagrin, the Small Blast went from Strength 9 to Strength 7 only. And that's unfortunate because I used to use that big blast to instant kill things like Tau battle suits, instant kill things with toughness 4 like Paladin Terminators. I mean, that's unfortunate. However, I can't complain about the fact that this tank has become an all-around tank. It can literally take on any target, and it is suited exactly to take on that target. You want to kill Marines now? 1 big blast from this guy ignores their armor. You want to kill Terminators? 1 small blast from this guy ignores their armor. You want to kill Armor 14 Land Raiders? Strength 9 Lance Shot, AP1. It doesn't care what their armor really is. I mean, it's pretty amazing that this tank can now take on all targets. And with the vehicle upgrades, I think you're going to want to put Holofields on it. You're probably going to want to put Spirit Stones on it. It makes it a little bit pricey, but very certainly worth it in my opinion. Let's talk about the Falcon. Another sort of pseudo-controversial tank. A lot of people saying that it totally sucks and you'll never take it. The thing you got to understand is that the pulse laser is a really great weapon, and the only thing holding the Falcon back before was the fact that its ballistic skill of 3 meant you kept missing so much with that pulse laser. How many times did you fire it and you got 2 misses, or like 1 hit and you never seemed to get those 2 hits? Well, with the ballistic skill of 4 now, that pulse laser is a lot more compelling because you're going to average, at least 1 hit, and in many cases you're going to get 2 hits with it. And that's a great weapon, and the fact that it can hold a few guys inside helps. Now, and I do like the fact that it didn't get that much more expensive, and the weapon upgrades got, of course, cheaper on it. So first of all, it got 10 points more expensive, but it's only really 5 points more expensive if you consider that you had to buy the Shuriken Cannon before. Now it comes with it. And for 5 points, wouldn't you upgrade your ballistic skill to 4? I mean, anybody would do that. Now, it's not as unkillable as it used to be back in the late days of 5th edition when, the holofields were actually the kind of thing that would keep you alive, 90% of the time. Which is why I'm surprised that Phil Kelly didn't make this a dedicated transport. It's no longer unkillable, and yeah, the pulse laser is a really good gun, but that gun that's on the Wave Serpent now is insane. So it's not like you're gaining all that much by taking the pulse laser necessarily. So I really wish that Phil Kelly had the foresight and you know, the real care to make these guys a dedicated transport, because there's very few things that they can transport anyways. You can't fit Wraithguard inside. You can't even put Guardians inside because minimum unit is 10 and this thing only holds 6. Really, Phil Kelly should have made this a dedicated transport. That said, is it useless in the heavy support section? Absolutely not. You get that pulse laser going, you can twin link it with your scatter laser, or you can even just give it a bright lance for massive strength 8 AP2 blastiness. Still a very solid tank, and I'm going to be testing it out to see how it does on the battlefield. The ballistic skill increase really helps it, because it really helps it be a heavy killer on the field. Let's continue on. Let's keep moving here. No time to slow down. So let's get into the Wraith Lords. This is an interesting unit, you know. This is a perfect example of how different modes of thinking can affect the same game. There's half the internet is saying that these guys suck now, they're worthless, never take them. The other half of the internet says, are you kidding me, they're amazing. I have to admit, I'm into that second camp. They got 30 points more expensive base, but keep in mind they gained an attack. They gained an attack, which is a really big deal, because that extra attack means they can actually really chop their way through combat. Now, their strength went down to 8 from 10. However, if you want that strength 10 back, all you got to do is declare a smash, and you're going to have the exact same number of attacks like you used to have, with strength 10, but now re-rolling armor penetration. So that's not a bad thing with these guys, and because the guns overall got a little bit cheaper, especially the heavier guns on these guys, you're going to be able to, and they're also not twin linked. You're going to be able to really put some shooting on this guy if you want. I gotta admit, I do like these guys. I like them. They're still solid like they used to be. Don't forget, monstrous creatures. If they're in area terrain, they don't even need to be 25% obscure. Just having like a sliver of a toe inside area terrain means you get that 5+ save. So it's not so hard to get a save on these guys. Mind you, in melee, you know, all bets are off then, right? You know, when those power fists hit you, there it is. But high toughness, still shoots really well, has the extra attack in melee now. And another really cool benefit is you can also, instead of replacing one of your guns with the Wraith Sword, the Wraith Glaive or whatever, you can actually just put it on for 5 points. It no longer replaces a weapon. That's a really nice benefit for these guys. I'm pretty happy with them, despite the fact that somehow the cost went up. But if you actually add up the cost of the heavy guns on them, you'll see they're about the same cost as they used to be, except that they have the extra attack, which is really good at that high strength, you know, monstrous creature. Let's talk about Wraith Knights. I guess I keep saying this, but also another relatively controversial figure. Some people saying it's useless, other ones saying, oh, it's so good. You know, my first gut reaction was not that it's not good, but that it's just kind of boring, you know? Like, I was hoping for some really cool, weird Eldar abilities, some kind of unusual abilities we'd never seen that really kind of, you know, mess with the game plan. That didn't happen. But once the shock of that wears off, and you really think about this guy, he is a thug. He is a thug. The fact that he's jump infantry, and he has so many attacks at strength 10. He has so many wounds at such a high toughness. I mean, this guy is the one thing that we haven't seen in Eldar, and that this guy is that he is an all-arounder. He can fight, he can shoot, he can defend, he can attack. There's almost nothing like that in the Eldar army. This, you know, we are an army of specialists, and this guy is the ultimate generalist, which is a really cool thing to have in your army. You know, one turn you can blast with some kind of, you know, guns that you've taken. The next turn you can assault a surviving unit of like 5-6 Marines, wipe them out, and then move on, you know? It's pretty impressive what he can do on the battlefield. And I can't wait to, you know, get one of these guys and paint him up after I've sold a kidney to buy the model. But if you really think about the fact that he's a jump infantry, I mean, you can deep strike with him. You can, you know, get better charge ranges if you save your jetpack. You can really jump around the table, get better angles on things with your guns. Pretty impressive what you can do with this guy. I'm a little surprised that you can't take all the weapons options on him. Why couldn't I, for instance, take 2 bright lances if I take shield and sword? Why can't I take, you know, like the missile launcher? You know, we're stuck with the sort of multi-shot weapons. That's a little weird. Why doesn't he have a rule that lets you fire more than his requisite 2 guns? You know, maybe you have to buy that, but that'd be cool if he was able to do that. Or else, you know, the whole coolness of having a zillion guns on him is kind of lost. you know, some of the coolness is not there. However, usability, very, very useful. I think in the short term, Scatter Shield and Sun Cannon is going to be the way to play with him, with potentially a Scatter Laser to twin link the Sun Cannon shots. That said, the cheap version with just the 2 guns, you know, just the 2 long guns, not a bad option. Really cheap. Those 2 guns, you know, are good range. Yeah, it's true. They're only the same as 2 Wraith Guard guns, but the extra range really helps, because the main thing with the Wraith Guard is they have to get into range to use them. That thing doesn't need to get in range at all. It flies up 12 inches, blasts, and starts cooking any vehicle, any multi-wound model in the game that it wants. Right? So. I do like the cheap version because you can also just stand in area terrain and get that 5+, like we always used to do with our Wraith Lords back in 5th edition. This guy benefits from it too. What a joke, eh? That this guy can stand in a bunch of shrubs and get a 5+. But hey, that's 6th edition for you. Abuse it and use it. That said, if you do plan to go into melee against serious melee threats, you're going to need that shield, because anything that can fight you is going to ignore your 3+ armor. You know, pretty interesting guy. Watch out for those poison shots, but other than that, a lot of points, but pretty hard to argue with the fact that he does everything well. He literally does everything. I think that pretty much does it. Let me just make sure I haven't missed something here in the heavy support section we talked about. Oh, we didn't talk about the Night Spinner yet. That's the last thing we got to talk about. Very cool tank. I did mention it earlier on in one of my other videos. I can't seem to find the Night Spinner here, so I'm just going to go right on to the site here. I'll just find you a photo of it. It's nice to look at what you're talking about here. Let's get to the Fire Prism kits, and where's the photos for the spinner? Should be around here somewhere, right? You know, the Night Spinner tank. Really cool tank in a sense that now it's actually strength 7 or even strength 8 against things that have no initiative like vehicles. It's got the monofilament rule, very similar to what it did before. It still puts you into it still is able to fight vehicles and infantry equally well. In fact, it really fights vehicles a lot better than it used to. The only thing it's lost is that it's no longer automatically twin linked. It's no longer a twin link gun, not from what I can see. Maybe I've missed something, but the big gun is no longer twin link. Not a huge loss. It stayed just as cheap as it used to, so that's good to see. And it's going to be a really useful tank. The main benefit it also gained is it gained a torrent template that it can put down and cook infantry or you know, zot things that are in a line, which is so cool. It's so cool. I love seeing that. I love the creativity when you see how something like this gets a new ability that you can use, and that's so cool to see. So I quite like it quite a bit. And overall, the heavy support choices are really hard to choose, you know. And the ones that you choose are going to really dictate the kind of army you play. If you're playing a lot of fast vehicles, you're going to want fire prisms. You're going to maybe want some falcons to put stuff into. If you're playing a more static gunline, foot-based type army, you're going to want the Wraith Lords. You're going to want maybe some Wraith Knights in there as well. Wraith Knight actually works in a lot of different armies because of how fast he is. He can keep up with a fast army. He can sit back and shoot with a slow army. Pretty interesting stuff. If you want some interesting options that your opponent's not expecting, not looking for, you've got some Dark Reapers there with some really cool mix of abilities. Of course, if you just want massive gunfire, you've got the Warwalkers happening. You know, it's just a packed section, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. It is going to be hard to choose, and you know, what you choose will determine really kind of how your army goes. All right, guys, thanks so much for listening and as always watching, and keep on watching. I'm going to hopefully have some battle reports up soon, as soon as I can find some time to get some games in. It's not easy right now. It's the end of the year for me here, but keep on watching, and I'll see you guys later.